in the pipeline. I think Gary Locke would be the more qualified. I met him last week, and he's nowhere near doing that. He just finished ambassadorship from China. As you know, he served as Secretary of Commerce. He was also the governor of the state of Washington. Look at his senator. Besides from Hawaii, where a representative from Asian descent, really no Chinese American. And the House of Representatives, like I said, we now have a couple, Judy Chu, we have Grace Ming from New York, and we have a third one, Ted Lee, a good friend of mine from Torrance, who will get elected, I think, will get elected. But the numbers you look at in terms of the political representation among Asians, and especially Chinese American here, is surprisingly low. And when I was the head of the Asian Pacific American Municipal officials, looking around the country trying to recruit more people to join in the city council level, school board level, what we of course always found is the fact that Asians do very well in school, doctors, lawyers, dentists, lawyers more recently now, doctors, engineers, more traditionally. But when it comes to politics, it's still an area that a lot of times the parents are not that encouraging. One thing, Charlie, if you think you make the least at this table, the politicians actually make me want less. The salary when I was the Sunnyvale mayor, believe it or not, was $28,000 a year. You certainly cannot feed a family. It's considered a part-time position. So as you know, there's no such thing as a part-time mayor. When somehow it burned down in the middle of the night, you know, the press wants to talk to the mayor, not to the public information officer. So it's a great honor. It's a really wonderful job. You get to meet everybody in the community. You get to see all the great things that people really do a lot of some hero. But at the same time, you're always wanted someone. You always want someone. I was late to, but we have our state of the city for Sunnyvale actually ready today. And you can see as the mayor, everybody wants you to somewhere. Kids, babies, Eagle Scout swearing in, wedding, you know, funeral, anything. They want to make it. So it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people. It's a great honor. I certainly want to say that, you know, law is a wonderful education. It's a wonderful tool. But no different from money. Money is a wonderful tool. Don't just think of making money as the goal. It's really something. You need to do something with it. For better for the community, you can remodel your house, make things better for your kids, but ultimately it really is a tool. And I think it's important to not to forget that fact that it is a means for an end. And that you know, you might make, you know, for example, I know a lot of PAs who run district attorneys who run for judgeship, right? It's a very good judge. And you know this, Charlie, when they run for judgeship, they just took a 20% pay cut. What's the window is, right? To be a judge, you actually get less than the prosecutor down there arguing. It's very interesting how it works. And then, of course, the county supervisor just makes 80% of what the judge makes. And that's actually the highest paid politicians. The mayor of San Jose, big city, right? What's that? The 10th largest city of the United States, with 1 million people. How much do you think Chuck Reed makes a year? 100,000. Yes, that's right. And the council, their council member makes about $70,000. So you don't do this for the money. You don't do this money. You do it because you really want to serve the community, you want to help others. And certainly, having that leadership role, you all in this call life, and you have a lot of opportunities to help people and to be a role model for others. And I certainly have been honored to have the chance to do that. And we can talk more later about that. I've been happy exhausted my 5-7 minutes. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I told you guys this would be a great panel. I guess what I would ask you is to talk about a little bit is, you know, being in the law field, you know, people that are in the legal industry, you know, we all know, we always talk about large law firm, making partner associates, stuff like that. But, you know, when I was in high school, I had no idea what any of that was. You know, maybe I watched LA Law Firm or something. That was about it. So maybe you can talk a little just in terms of background. You know, what exactly is a partner? Is it really godlike like people portray it to be, or is that just a myth? Or is it, you know, the opposite? And then a little bit about, you know, well, mostly about how you got to where you are today, your background, and what is it that you do and what you like and don't like about it.
Wow, okay. Hey everybody, my name's On. I am really, really excited to be here, and I want to thank you guys for coming out today. Yes, being a partner is godlike. It's mythic proportions, and it's fantastic. Okay, you know what? It's here when we talk about salaries. I'll be honest with you. Yes, technically we make more as partners, but if you calculate the number of hours I work, I make a little bit more than minimum wage. So I'm probably making less per hour than anybody else here on the panel, I can tell you that. But my name is Amu. I work for Novak Truce. We are very proud to be the 5th or the 6th largest IP firm in the country. I'm director of Asia. So every 2 months, I take this crazy trip that goes from San Francisco to Hong Kong to Shenzhen to Beijing to Qingdao to Seoul. Am I missing anywhere, Charlene?
Japan.
Japan. And it takes about 4 weeks to do that trip. It's awesome. I love being a lawyer. Going to law school is one of the best decisions I made in my life. And I'm going to share with you about the other best decision I ever made in my life. But those of you who are interested in law, I'm happy to talk to you because I am excited. I went to law school when I was about 30 years old, and I've been in the law field for about 10 years now. So, and I'm still excited, and I'm still exuberant about it. The reason law for me is so exciting, and it's so appropriate for me, and maybe so many people in the room here, is to me it's the great equalizer. I want to ask a question of all the parents in the room. How many of you are judges? All right. How many of you are tech billionaires? Oh. How many of you are lawyers? Yeah. How many of you are doctors, maybe? You know what? That's the same with my parents. We were poor. We were in a much worse condition than anybody else here. So, my father's Chinese, my mother is Vietnamese. I was born in Vietnam. My father and my mother did not go to Stanford. They didn't go to Harvard. They weren't tech billionaires. They weren't lawyers. They weren't doctors. My father didn't graduate from high school. He didn't speak English, and he wouldn't let my mother go to college. So I came over, and I grew up in Houston, Texas, when I was about 8 years old. We were poor. We were refugees from Vietnam. Back in Houston, they used to call us chinks. And I'm gay. So if you want to talk about triple strikes, that's it. You're poor, you're Asian, and you're gay. And it was rough growing up, I'll tell you that. But I knew that law was going to be the great equalizer because you don't have to have parents that are tech billionaires. You don't have to have parents that are judges or lawyers or doctors to go to law school. And it's always been my dream to go to law school, and I wanted to. We just couldn't afford it. Dad left when I was about 14. He saddled my mom with a lot of debt from the IRS. It was about $100,000, which may not sound like it's a lot now, but back in the late 70s, that's a lot of money. And the IRS chased us around the country for about 15 years. I think the worst experience of my life is when I came home from school. I was a junior at Woodbridge High School, and Mom was crying. And Mom was a pretty strong woman, so she never cries, never. And she was on the phone, and I asked her, hey, what's wrong? The last $300 we had, she had put into my sister's Bank of America account to hide it. But the IRS found it, and they confiscated $300. And that was the last amount of money that we had. So I always wanted to go to law school, but we just didn't have the money. Mom put myself through high school, and she put my sister through high school, and she put me through college. So when I graduated from college, it's not like I could say, hey, Mom, can you put your life on hold for 3 more years while I go to law school? So I started working, and I put my mom through school, and I put my sister through school. But the good news is, Mom liked school so much, she went back, after she got her BA, she got her MBA, and she got her CPA. For the past 10 years, she's been a VP of Finance for a Japanese conglomerate.
Wow.
I put my sister through UCLA. She ended up becoming a doctor. She became chief resident at our hospital. She became an emergency room doctor. She did her fellowship in pediatrics, and today she's one of maybe 2,000 doctors that has her specialization. She runs the entire emergency medical program training program at the University of Maryland. So that got a happy ending. It took about 10 years to pay off their debt. So by the time I was 30, I was like, you know what? I have no more bills to pay. I was able to help take some companies public in my career. And I thought, if I don't go to law school now, I am never going to go. So when I tell you that going to law school was one of the best decisions of my life, the second best decision of my life was making sure mom and sis got through college. That's why for me, when I went to college or when I went to law school at 30-ish, it was such a privilege. I had worked hard to get here, and by the time I got there, I didn't want to waste it. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be the great student. I wanted to attend the lectures. I wanted to listen. I wanted to intern. I wanted to work. And I was really excited about it. And 10 years later, I'm still really excited about it. If I might give you one little piece of advice, is I would encourage you to work before you go to law school, if you're thinking about it. Exactly like Susan said. I spent 10 years and started in marketing and business development, and I launched American companies abroad. And those 10 years in sales and business development and in technology were so valuable. It helped me get into a great law school. And when I became a lawyer, it helped me so much with the clients that I work with, because they listen to you and they respect you. You're not some young kid that just graduated from law school and can recite law from a book. You have experience. You understand business. You understand finance. You understand how money works. So that's my encouragement to you, and I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad that you're interested in a field I'm interested and passionate about. Thank you.
Let me ask a couple questions, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. And I have a special surprise question for the panelists at the end. So that'll be fun. Don't worry. The main question that I have, I think, is, and this is a very open-ended question. This is a program for Chinese Americans. Right? So people of Chinese descent, or first generation Chinese immigrants, or people that have been here for a while but are ethnically Chinese or have Chinese culture. And I would ask each of you, are there special sort of challenges or opportunities that you see because of that? And it could be due to a number of different reasons. It could be just because, well, I'm Chinese and everyone else is not. It can be as simple as that. It could be language. My English is not as good as the people who grew up in the United States, or my Chinese is better than everyone else, and there could be opportunities that other people don't have. Could be working away, and it could also be cultural. In terms of, the Chinese people that we hire tend to be, very hard workers, but don't speak up for themselves, and so, they do very well early on, but then, they don't get promoted at that high, later in life. That tends to work, or maybe you see the reverse. We really value the people that don't, tell everyone how great they are, and over time, it works out and those people do better. And particularly since each of you is in a different area, just sort of what you see in politics or representation or the public sector or the private law firm, or Susan, of course, you can talk about it. And I'll just open it up to whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I could go first on this issue. For me, language has been very critical to my success, I guess, in my law practice. Partly because of the fact that I do speak 3 Chinese dialects, Cantonese, Mandarin, and the Shanghai dialect, because I was born in Hong Kong and my mom's from Shanghai. And the fact that I actually studied Spanish when I first moved here, so I actually took a few years of Spanish and studied more in college, so I actually am somewhat fluent in Spanish. That opened a huge door for me in terms of meeting potential clients. And the thing is, many clients in the United States of Chinese descent, let's say, they would speak fluent English, but the ability to be able to speak Chinese to communicate. They might be more comfortable speaking Chinese to you, number one. But actually, more importantly, is the cultural aspect. And that's where I'm fully convinced. My Spanish really is not that good in terms of communicating. But when the client who speaks Spanish to me realizes that I actually took the trouble to learn the language, to understand the culture, that I think is really the important part. That makes a difference when people are choosing an attorney to represent them, that really understands the concerns and needs of how things are being done, for example. So to me, that Chinese language has been extremely useful. And some of my biggest clients I work with right now are of Chinese descent, be it from mainland China or from Hong Kong, so the Cantonese management. And I would say when it comes to hiring law clerks and attorneys, I am less concerned about necessarily that they have to speak Chinese. But I do really prefer somebody that has some other than English, that is speaking another language. I don't mean speaking Southern. And because of that very reason, I mean, my admin assistant, she's fluent in Japanese, and we have various staff members in the office that speak fluent either Korean or Hindi, I don't know, Spanish, of course. And those are the skill sets that I view as very important because it truly is strengthening our firm's capabilities, are able to handle the issues and culture of the client, and they appreciate that. So that's why I think that aspect of different languages and culture is very important. And in politics now, just wanted to add on to it. I mean, I still have Cantonese twang in my accent. I try to work on it, but it's still there. Some of you could hear it. It is a bit of a handicap, believe it or not, because when you run for office, when people listen to you, they really want to hear as accent-free, or at least to the minds of the voters as possible, I do believe. And that is somewhat of a barrier. And sometimes I've met some candidates of Chinese or Asian descent that when they have a strong accent, I tend to tell them try to work on that a little bit, and you want to work on your strength and your weakness, because perception, again, whether you call it as handicap, is still something that's only an issue. Now, here in Silicon Valley, we really have so many immigrants living here. I think that handicap is less. So long with the immigrants, those of us who came from elsewhere all voting. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the number of people who actually vote, it turns out Chinese American, many of us are eligible, but didn't bother to either register to vote, or even though they registered, didn't vote. And these are actual factual numbers that are really sad, because how you vote is supposed to be secret. Right? This is a democracy, you vote secret. But whether you vote or not is not secret. I can pull up, if you're a voter, I could actually pull up and realize how many times you voted in every election in the last 5 years. These are public information. Not how you vote, but whether you vote. And because if you don't vote, guess what? If I'm running for office, I'm not coming to you to try to get your vote. To me, you don't do me any good if I won't get reelected. I always tell people, when people come to the dais and say, I'm a taxpayer, you got to listen to me. I said, sir, let me change the question the other way around. Are you a registered voter and do you vote? Because if you tell me that I'm a registered voter, I vote every time since I was 18 years old, and I make sure my family vote and every one of my neighbors vote, I've got about 80, 40 votes, I'll be sitting up and say, yes sir, what can I do for help? So and that's why the actual act of participating in voting is so important. And that's one part that with this group, I just want to say it is absolutely vital that once you get eligible to vote, please register and you do have to vote. That's what makes the community strong.
So let me follow up on that. So I think, more is always better. So if I have the Chinese language, it's always going to be a plus. If I have the Spanish language, it's always going to be a plus. On the flip side, how good does my English have to be? Can I, and everyone on the panel has extremely good English. Not all Chinese Americans have English of that quality, and so, and for whatever reason, I'm a math person and I'm just weak in English, or, English is my second language and I didn't really, pay attention to the English classes in China or things like that. And so, how much of an impediment is it if you're, how good does your English have to be? And I guess I would ask on it, and for you, I think confused. Well, big time litigator, millions of dollars in the balance, you're going to go into trial, and you're going to present in English, right? They don't really care that you can speak Chinese too. So that when you look for people to hire, if you find people who are qualified, and you say, well, it's great that they have that they have the Chinese, but their English needs to be impeccable also, or do you make some allowances?
It's a great question, and yes, your English has to be impeccable. I feel, let me ask a question. I want to talk to all the non-parents. How many of you speak Cantonese? Okay. How many of you speak Mandarin? Wow. Okay. How many of you speak Shanghainese? Wow. Okay. Everybody who raised your hand, talk to me afterwards because we want to hire you. If you're not able to be a lawyer, we'll hire you as an intern in our office. If you're going to do litigation, which is what I do, jury trials, appearing before judges, your English needs to be impeccable, right? And that's just the reality of the law field. So when you speak Cantonese, when you speak Mandarin, when you speak Spanish, when you speak Shanghainese, and you speak Japanese, those are wonderful, but those are secondary. If you're going to be a litigator and you're going to work with American clients, your English really has to be impeccable because they're paying you $500 an hour, $600 an hour, $1,000 an hour, $2,000 an hour. And it's not only for your employer, it's also for your clients. How many of you have businesses in China? Okay. How many of you have businesses in Taiwan? All right. I'm going to talk to you afterwards. I would say about 60% of my clients are in Taiwan and China. And it's really funny. They want somebody who can communicate with them fluently in Chinese because they want you to be that Chinese, but they want you to be American enough so that when you're negotiating for them with opposing counsel and you're fighting for them in court, you're not speaking with a broken accent. So my advice is absolutely hone those language skills. Get your Mandarin, your Cantonese, your Shanghainese to the best it can be. Be able to read and write. But at the same time, work on your English. I came to the United States, like I was telling you, when I was 8. I didn't speak any English. Most people, when they come to the U.S. that late in life, they have an accent. My mom hired an accent coach for me. So 3 days a week, 2 hours a day, I had an accent coach to break my Vietnamese accent and replace it with a Texas twang.
Anyone else want to comment in terms of Chinese give you advantages or?
I just echo the same sentiment. I'm a trial attorney. I speak in front of the jury, and we are wordsmiths. Every word that we use, we have to choose carefully. And if we don't have that within our vocabulary, it severely impedes our ability to do our job. So, with that being said, if you're thinking of working as an attorney, whether it's writing, written skills, or your verbal skills, it really has to be very good. So, that's just part of the trade. You can't be a good engineer if you're not good at math. And this is what lawyers do.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. Because I'm kind of a recent grad from law school. And the truth is, my English is not my first language anyways, it's my third language. So I came to the United States at the age of 21. So, thanks. Yeah, so I think my impression is that in law school, if you want to be a litigator, I think English should be your first language, preferable if you want to be a good litigator. And at the same time, if you want to do transactional work afterwards, and if you want to work on something between China and the United States, English doesn't have to be your first language. I think I'm the best example. So in law school, as we can see, for anybody, even for the Americans, legal language is a new language for everybody. So in order to do well in law, you really need to absorb a lot of information in a different language. It's not really the language that we're speaking right now, but it's the legal language. So for anybody, for non-English-speaking people or second language speaking people, or for the mother tongue English-speaking people, they still need to learn a new language. So I don't think that I'm very disadvantaged in that sense. And another point that I want to make is that today, as you can see, two superpowers, and that is the United States and China. And just in the work that I've been doing in the past 1 year, I can see a big trend that there are so many more opportunities between China and the United States. So for example, now I have clients from China who are CEOs from public companies, and they wanted to come here and acquire a lot of US companies. In that sense, if you have two languages, I think it will be a big advantage for you. Well, but of course, just getting back, if you want to be a litigator, I think English has to be really good.
Great. So let me just ask a little bit about follow-on. I had a son who was a freshman in college and a daughter who was a junior in high school. So I know exactly what all the parents are thinking. In this area, the stereotypical thing is take as many AP classes as you can and get a 4.0 in all of them. So let me ask the panelists, what other skills do you think people should develop besides that?
I feel very strongly about this because I'm probably the worst student out of the group as well. So, in addition to other, I really had to compensate what I lacked in school because it didn't interest me that much in supplementing it with what my job is today. What Otter was saying, as a young minority who's about to face, the world before him, AP classes aren't going to get you as far as you think because you're going to be a good worker. Are you going to be that good supervisor? Are you going to be the decision maker? Because if you're not, AP classes are not going to help you. What you need to do is couple the wonderful academic skills and really get out there and become more well-rounded. Well-rounded in leadership skills. Being vocal. How do you be a leader in your community? That's what being a lawyer is a lot of the times. You're an advocate. You're a leader. Work on that. Work on integrating yourself to the community. Play sports. I played sports in high school. I did student council in high school. My grades were terrible. Well, not terrible. They were not that great. My point is, I work with people today who went to Harvard undergrad and Yale Law School, two most prestigious institutions in their respective, fields or whatever. But then you come out and you talk to them, and they're not as well respected as, say, someone who didn't go to as prestigious of a school, or they're working for someone who didn't go to as prestigious of a school. And the reason for that is because this is a foundation. Getting good grades, reading well, writing well is a foundation. But what else you can bring to the table is what's going to define you and set you apart from everyone else that's your competition. So I've sat on interview panels where I think people should be interviewing me for a job, but these people have clerked for the Supreme Court justices, people who went to Stanford Law School, and they didn't get a job at my office because they didn't bring that well-roundedness that we're looking for. How do you relate to people? And I think that's really important, and I can't encourage you guys enough to reach out and do those kinds of things.
Coming from the law school side, and I work every day with the law students who are trying to find jobs. And I have to say, I've got some of the most intelligent students in the country. It's very hard to get into Stanford Law School. You have to be exceptionally bright to get in. So I'm working with people who start with that skill set. They've got that. What makes the difference for them in terms of the kind of opportunities are the other pieces. It's how well-rounded are they? Can they interact well with other people? Do they have good judgment, good business sense, good people skills? Can they interview well because they're able to relate with the person who's sitting across for them? in fact, I have to say, the people who struggle the most coming out of Stanford Law School